Surveillance cameras watch without warning, catching events no one is prepared to see. Among routine recordings are moments that end in sudden, haunting tragedy. These aren't staged or imagined, they're real lives caught in their final moments. In this video, we explore 5 true cases of disturbing deaths captured on CCTV. It was the morning of August 6, 2024, in Sao Paulo, Brazil. 45-year-old Adriana Maria de Jesus was heading to work. She was employed by a family living in the Santo André building, a decades-old apartment complex in the city. Adriana followed this routine often, but on this day, things would take a very different turn. Her husband, Gildelio Alves dos Santos, also worked there as the concierge. From his front desk, he had access to live security cameras that showed the hallways, the entrance, and the elevator. For him, it was just another workday. Everything appeared normal, until it wasn't. Adriana stepped into the elevator on the 5th floor. She looked calm, moving through her morning routine. At the 7th floor, 2 other residents entered. One was 27 years old, the other 63. Adriana then pressed the button to head down toward the ground floor. From his monitor, Gildelio watched. The elevator moved as expected, first going up 2 floors, then back down toward the 5th. But suddenly, something went wrong. Without warning, the elevator dropped. On screen, Gildelio saw Adriana's arms go up as the floor beneath her gave way. The 2 men were thrown off balance. The camera captured the moment of panic, then impact. The screen filled with smoke and dust as the elevator slammed into the ground. In seconds, everything changed. Adriana and the 2 men were trapped inside. Rescue workers arrived quickly. Adriana was pulled out alive but with severe injuries. She was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. The 2 men were also hospitalized but later released. Adriana, however, would not recover. 1 week later, on August 13th, she passed away. The tragedy raised serious concerns about the building itself. The Santo André building was more than 60 years old, and according to reports, the elevator had never been replaced in all that time. No modern safety systems had been installed. Atlas Schindler, the engineering company responsible for maintenance, confirmed they had advised the building's owners to upgrade the lift. That advice was ignored. Now, investigators were looking into whether negligence had played a role. The Sao Paulo Department of Public Security announced that the case was being investigated as one involving bodily injury and possible system failure. They began interviewing witnesses and reviewing evidence to determine what had gone wrong. In October, 2 months later, local media released the CCTV footage. It spread quickly. The video shows Adriana calmly entering the elevator, the men stepping in after her, the doors closing, and then the sudden fall. The final moments end in smoke. For Gildelio, the tragedy was deeply personal. He and Adriana had not only been married, but they had also known each other since childhood. They were childhood sweethearts, separated for nearly 28 years before reuniting 6 years ago. Soon after reconnecting, they married. Gildelio described those years as a second chance at the life they always wanted, but that ended on August 6th. In an interview, he said, "I watched the monitor screen and saw my wife going up and everything was normal. When it came down, I was horrified. My heart is broken. I have to find the strength to work and to get on with life because I have to work." 2 months later, the official investigation was still in its early stages. Authorities continued reviewing footage, speaking to witnesses, and working with engineers to determine the exact cause of the malfunction. What is clear is that the elevator system was outdated. More than 6 decades old, it had never been modernized. That neglect may have cost Adriana her life and left her husband to witness the final moments of the person he had loved since childhood. Adriana Maria de Jesus was 45 years old. She was on her way to work with plans for the future and a husband who cared deeply for her. But a routine elevator ride ended in disaster. For the building, safety measures may finally come, but for Adriana and Gildelio, they came too late. It was October 22, 2013, in Danvers, Massachusetts. Colleen Ritzer, a 24-year-old math teacher at Danvers High School, stayed after class to help her students. One of them was a 14-year-old freshman named Philip Chisholm. The day seemed normal. Colleen was doing what she loved, teaching, but she never made it home. Colleen had been teaching at Danvers for just a year. She was known as kind, energetic, and deeply dedicated. She often stayed late to give extra help and even used social media to encourage students. Her Twitter bio read, "Math teacher often too excited about the topics I'm teaching." She truly meant it. Her passion started early. She studied math at Assumption College, graduating with honors, focusing on secondary education. She began teaching 8th grade before moving on to Danvers High, where she taught geometry and algebra. She was admired by students and colleagues alike. At only 24 years old, her career was just beginning. But that October afternoon, something went terribly wrong. At around 2:54 p.m., Colleen left her classroom to use the restroom. 1 minute later, surveillance footage showed Chisholm following her inside, pulling up his hood. This was the women's restroom. At 3:06 p.m., a female student unknowingly walked in. She later testified that she saw a bare bottom and thought someone was changing, so she left immediately. In reality, it was something far worse. At 3:07 p.m., Chisholm left the bathroom carrying Colleen's pants. At 3:16 p.m., he returned with a recycling bin, and by 3:22 p.m., he was seen dragging it out of the building, this time wearing a black ski mask. By evening, both Colleen and Chisholm were reported missing. His mother called the police when he didn't return home. Just after midnight, officers found him walking along a highway. He had a box cutter stained with blood, and when asked, he calmly replied, "The girl." He also carried Colleen's credit cards and belongings. Hours later, investigators found Colleen's body in the woods behind the school, hidden under leaves. She had been severely harmed and left without clothing from the waist down. Nearby was a note that read, "I hate you all," along with a tree branch, Chisholm's backpack, and his school ID. At trial, prosecutors revealed Colleen had asked Chisholm to stay after class. During their session, she asked about his move from Tennessee. That simple question seemed to upset him. Soon after, he followed her into the restroom, strangled her, and stabbed her at least 16 times. He then placed her in the recycling bin, wheeled her outside, and later harmed her again before cutting her throat. After abandoning her body, Chisholm went to a movie theater to watch a Woody Allen film, then shoplifted a knife from a wholesale store. The evidence, surveillance footage, forensic findings, and his own statements, was undeniable. Chisholm was charged with murder, aggravated assault, and armed robbery. Tried as an adult, he was found guilty. In 2016, Judge David Lowy sentenced him to life in prison with parole possible after 40 years, calling the act brutal and senseless. Colleen's family gave heartbreaking statements. Her brother Dan said, "You do not know pain until you are forced to watch someone you love lowered into the ground." Her sister Laura vowed that their family would never stop fighting. Their mother Peggy described the constant pain of family photos missing Colleen, while her father Tom recalled unknowingly walking past the woods where her body was left. Chisholm's mother Diane also spoke, offering respect and prayers to the Ritzer family, but the case didn't end there. In June 2014, while awaiting trial, Chisholm attacked a youth services worker in a bathroom, trying to strangle her and harm her with a pencil. The victim survived but was left traumatized. Chisholm later pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 17 to 20 more years. Though acquitted of one specific violation involving a tree branch, he was convicted of all other charges. Today, Chisholm remains in prison, eligible for parole in 40 years. For Colleen's family, the pain never fades. They now honor her by supporting future teachers through a scholarship in her name. Friends and family wear pink, her favorite color, to keep her memory alive. Colleen Ritzer is remembered not for the way her life ended, but for who she truly was. A young woman who cared deeply about others, loved teaching, and should still be here today. It was May 23, 2021 in northern Italy. A small red and white cable car was making its usual 20-minute trip from the town of Stresa up the steep slopes of Mount Materoni. On board were 15 people, families, couples, and children, enjoying a clear Sunday morning. The ride was supposed to end at the 900-foot peak, overlooking Lake Maggiore and the Alps, but the ride would never reach the top. Around midday, just 1,000 feet from the station, something went terribly wrong. Witnesses nearby heard a loud hissing sound. The cabin suddenly slid backward along the line, suspended hundreds of feet in the air. The main cable pulling it upward had snapped. Normally, an emergency brake is designed to stop the car in this situation, but for reasons unknown, the brake failed. The cabin picked up speed, slammed into a pylon, then detached from the cables completely. It fell about 65 feet before hitting the ground, but the impact didn't stop it. The car rolled nearly 500 yards down the steep mountainside before being forced to a halt by 2 pine trees. The crash was devastating. Some passengers were thrown from the wreckage. Others were trapped inside. 4 families were on board, including 5-year-old Eitan Biran and his relatives, his father Amit, mother Tal, 2-year-old brother Tom, and his great-grandparents, Yitzhak and Barbara, had come from Israel to visit. All of them died, except Eitan. Eitan was critically hurt with head trauma, chest injuries, and broken legs. Rescuers found him unconscious and airlifted him to Turin. Doctors later discovered that Amit had wrapped himself around his son at the moment of impact, shielding him. That likely saved Eitan's life, though everyone else in his family died instantly. Another child, 5-year-old Mattia Zorloni, survived the initial crash. He was traveling with his parents, who planned to marry next month. Sadly, Mattia passed away in the hospital hours later. Among the dead were 27-year-old Silvia Malnati and her fiancé, 29-year-old Alessandro Merlo. They had been together for a decade and were planning to marry soon. Also lost was Dr. Roberta Pistolato, who had worked through the pandemic. She was celebrating her 40th birthday that day with her partner Angelo. She sent her sister a text before boarding. It would be her final message. There was also 27-year-old researcher Serena Cosentino and her boyfriend, 23-year-old student Mohammad Reza Shahaisavandi, on a weekend trip together. In total, 14 people died. Eitan was the only survivor. Investigators soon learned that the traction cable had snapped near the top. This alone should not have caused disaster. The emergency brake should have locked onto the support cable, but it didn't. That failure let the cabin roll backward until it detached and fell. Authorities opened an inquiry to examine why both systems had failed. Prosecutor Olympia Bossi said the brake malfunction was the key issue. The brakes didn't work. Otherwise, the cabin would have stopped. CCTV footage from the station captured the cabin's final moments. The service had only reopened a month earlier after COVID-19 closures. The line had been renovated in 2016, with inspections as recently as December 2020, yet officials couldn't explain how both the cable and brake failed. The transport minister formed a commission to investigate. Italy had faced tragedies before: the Genoa Bridge collapse in 2018 and a deadly train explosion in 2009. Now, the Stresa Materone crash raised urgent questions about cable car safety and oversight. Rescue teams described a grim scene. Some victims were found inside the wreckage, others in the woods. One fire truck even overturned while trying to reach the slope. Photos showed the crushed cabin in the forest, twisted among broken trees. At the hospital, Eitan's aunt and grandparents stayed by his side. Doctors said the next 2 days were critical. His aunt explained that their parents had traveled from Israel to escape tensions back home. They thought, what could happen in Italy, she said. That mountain, once a peaceful spot for visitors, had become the site of one of Italy's worst modern transport disasters. A snapped cable, a failed brake, and 14 lives lost. It was August 12, 2025, in Lancaster, California. A quiet neighborhood in Los Angeles County, usually calm and uneventful, was shaken when 33-year-old Sheila Cabrera was reported missing. She was a mother of 3, active in her community, and never left her children without telling someone. Neighbors and friends immediately sensed something was wrong. When deputies from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department checked in, they quickly realized this was more than just a missing person case. Neighbors had already noticed strange activity, and one piece of evidence completely changed the investigation. A Ring security camera captured Sheila's husband, 36-year-old Josimar Cabrera, dragging a large object wrapped in fabric from their apartment early on August 10th. 2 days before anyone reported her missing. The object looked heavy, and he was alone. Detectives studied the footage closely. It showed Sheila entering the apartment with him, but she was never seen again. Hours later, Josimar was caught dragging that wrapped object away. This raised immediate suspicion. Detectives feared something violent had happened inside the apartment. They launched a full search, bringing in specialized teams from Crescenta Valley, Altadena, and Montrose Mountain units. Their search focused on the Angeles National Forest, a large remote area north of Los Angeles. On the morning of August 16th, around 10 a.m., searchers made a grim discovery. Down an embankment, they found a body wrapped in green fabric, the same type seen in the surveillance video. It was Sheila. Her story stretched further back. She and Josimar had moved from Peru to the United States in 2023 with their 3 sons, hoping for a fresh start. But according to Sheila's mother, Helga Rochillo Moran, things at home were difficult. Sheila had confided that Josimar mistreated her and had even harmed their youngest child, only 3 years old. She wanted to return to Peru and had told her parents she planned to leave with her children just days before she vanished. Friends and neighbors confirmed this, saying Sheila had spoken of filing a report against Josimar and even asked for a divorce. On August 10th, a neighbor reported hearing screams from the apartment. Hours later, the security footage captured Josimar dragging the object. Not long after, Sheila was gone. By the time investigators connected the pieces, Josimar had already fled the country. He boarded a flight to Peru with their 3 sons. He was briefly detained at the airport but released because there was no warrant yet. From there, he disappeared again. In the days after, he gave conflicting stories. To some, he claimed immigration officers had taken Sheila, though records showed her appointment wasn't until September. To others, he said she had left him for another man, and later claimed she had been in an accident without details. These shifting explanations only deepened suspicions. Meanwhile, a friend in California worked with investigators and uncovered more evidence, including bloodstains near the condominium. Combined with the video and the body found in the forest, detectives were certain of what happened. That same day, authorities located the children in Peru and placed them in protective custody before reuniting them with their grandmother. In California, prosecutors filed charges against Josimar for ending Shayla's life, with an added charge for using a knife. If convicted, he faces 26 years to life in prison. The district attorney's office called the case horrific and vowed to pursue extradition. The Peruvian consulate confirmed Josimar's entry and stated they were cooperating, but extradition could take time. Meanwhile, news stations aired the ring footage of him dragging the heavy object before dawn. Neighbors described Josimar as often angry, and some confirmed Shayla had told them about the mistreatment. Investigators now believe he drove into the Angeles National Forest after the incident and left her body over an embankment, assuming it would never be found. But search teams proved otherwise. By August 16th, the evidence was clear. The footage, the blood, and the discovery in the forest all told the same story. The Sheriff's Department is working with international authorities to bring Josimar back to face justice. Shayla Cabrera was 33 years old, a mother, a daughter, and a friend. She had come to the United States seeking a better life and safety for her children. She wanted to escape and she asked for help, but she never got the chance. The investigation is still open, and its outcome now depends on whether Peru hands Josimar back to U.S. authorities. It was the early hours of August 4, 2019, in Cusco, Peru. The city was mostly quiet, its streets nearly empty. Cusco, once the capital of the Inca Empire, is now one of the most visited places in South America. Tourists come for its mountains, ancient history, and the beauty of the Andean highlands. But on this night, a tragedy would unfold on one of the city's bridges. Maybeth Espinoz was 34 years old, and her partner, 36-year-old Hector Vidal, had recently moved to Cusco together. Both were skilled mountaineers and had chosen the city as a base for their work as tour guides. They were part of the growing adventure tourism scene around Machu Picchu and had already built a reputation for being professional and passionate about the outdoors. On Saturday night, they went out together. Surveillance footage later showed them leaving a nightclub near the Bethlehem Bridge just after 1 a.m. They walked arm in arm through the cool night air. To anyone watching, it looked like an ordinary night, but only minutes later, everything would go wrong. The Bethlehem Bridge is not unusually tall, but it rises about 50 feet from its railing to the road below. Metal barriers line both sides, meant to prevent accidents. Still, for Maybeth and Hector, caught in a private moment, those barriers were not enough. Security cameras recorded them stopping at the middle of the bridge. They leaned on the railing, kissed, and held each other close. Then Maybeth climbed up, sitting on top of the railing with her back to the drop. She wrapped her legs around Hector's waist as he stood in front of her, steadying her. It looked playful and affectionate, but then, in just a second, the situation changed. Maybeth lost her balance and began tipping backward. Because her legs were locked around Hector, she pulled him forward with her. They both tried to hold on, reaching for the railing, but their weight carried them over. Still clinging to each other, they fell almost 50 feet to the road below. People nearby saw the fall and called for help. Emergency crews arrived quickly. Maybeth had died instantly from severe injuries. Hector was still alive, though badly hurt. He had a fractured skull and other critical injuries. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital, but doctors could not save him. He passed away shortly after arriving. Authorities studied the security footage, which showed exactly what had happened. It confirmed what witnesses had said. This was not a crime, but a tragic accident. The couple had simply lost their balance during a moment of closeness. The incident spread quickly through local and international news. Peruvian TV stations broadcasted the footage, which was difficult to watch but left no doubt about what had occurred. Officials also confirmed that no substances were involved. The focus remained on the recording, which gave a clear timeline of events. Maybeth and Hector were remembered by friends and colleagues as kind, professional, and deeply in love. Both had family in the Ancash region of northern Peru, where their bodies were later taken. Cusco has seen accidents before, often involving tourists. In March of the year prior, a traveler from Argentina had died when a boulder struck a tour bus, but this case was different. Maybeth and Hector weren't visitors. They were part of the city's tourism life, and their accident did not happen on a mountain trail, but on a bridge in the middle of town. The Bethlehem Bridge had never been seen as dangerous. Its railings were standard, and nothing about it stood out as a safety risk. But this event raised questions about how people interact with public spaces at night, when even small mistakes can turn deadly. In the days after, tributes poured in from the mountaineering and tourism community. Those who knew them spoke about their teamwork, their love for the outdoors, and their bond with each other. In the end, it all came down to a single moment of lost balance, and a fall that neither could survive.